Hello, I'm John Feldt, and this is the weekly water briefing for March 3rd, 2013. Well, it's been an extremely active couple of weeks as we headed from the middle part of February into early March now. This is the rainfall that occurred over the southeast U.S. last week. Now, if you look at the red area, that's over 5 inches of rain over the northwest part of Florida into parts of southwest Georgia. Also, very significant rain in yellow, that's 2 to 3 inches of rain, and then more modest amounts in green of about an inch or so that covered most of the Carolinas and northern parts of Georgia. Now, if you're a regular listener to this briefing, you might remember that a month or so ago, the action was over the northern part of Georgia, western Carolinas, and then as we got into the southern part of the state, it dropped off quite a bit. So the trend that we've seen over the last couple weeks has been very significant. You might also note how the higher elevations here are enhancing precipitation, often in the form of snow. So you can see along the spine of the higher elevations from Georgia up through the Carolinas, precipitation has been enhanced, not just this week, over the last couple weeks as well. Now, I just showed you the rainfall from the last week. I wanted to go 2 weeks ago. This is the week prior, and look at how much rain also occurred over the week prior to this past week. Also very extensive over a larger area than this past week, but also very heavy rain. So if I look at percent of normal for the last week, over the last 7 days, you can see the excessive amounts of rain, 3 times normal for the week over parts of southern Georgia and northwest Florida. And generally speaking, this area has been fairly dry with the exception of the last couple of weeks. The area that's been fairly wet now for the longer period of time span of the winter, Alabama and Mississippi, has actually been pretty quiet last week. Most of Mississippi was below normal precipitation, as well as northwest Alabama. That was the hot spot earlier this winter, and now it seems like the action has shifted further to the south. If I go past the past 30 days and look at percent of normal precipitation, you can see the above normal amounts over southern Alabama, the southern half of Georgia, into the southern part of South Carolina and northwest Florida. Now, you probably are thinking this is the area, if any part of the southeast U.S. needed the rain the most. This has been in the midst of a long-term drought, and over the last 30 days, there's definitely been a very significant improvement because rainfall has been anywhere from 2 to 3 times normal over the last 30 days. Now, as we are getting late in the winter here, I thought I'd show some water equivalents of snow. And for the southeast U.S., for the most part, it looks like the highest snow depth and the water equivalents are in the higher elevations of the southeast U.S. A couple areas over northern Alabama, a bit of snow in the colder air that we've had over the last couple days. Sort of interesting looking further to the north. This is your typical snowpack up in this region that's beginning to build. But this has been another hot spot from parts of Oklahoma, northwest Oklahoma, Kansas into Missouri, especially in this area right here, central Missouri. It's really picked up quite a bit of snow over the last week or so. Now, there are some floods that resulted from that heavy rain over the last couple weeks. Here's an update. And of particular concern would be the areas of red, which is moderate flooding, and a couple areas of purple, which are major flooding, nearing their peak at the current time. So there has been, even though we were in a drought, it can change very quickly, and indeed it did, and there was some scattered flooding due to the heavy rain, not just over the last week, but over the last 2 weeks. Now, it's been very interesting from a drought perspective. I put here about a month ago on January 22nd and the latest one on February 26th. And look how much the drought has been extinguished over the southeast U.S., particularly that core of drought over Georgia. Now, this didn't take in all the rain. There was more rain, a bit more rain after this, but you can really see that much of the intensity of the drought has been extinguished. Now, the aerial coverage is still has been diminished, but not as much as the intensity. You can see very little drought remains in Alabama, but still the percentage in Georgia is still fairly high as far as the extent. It's just the intensity. So if we would have 1 or 2 more rain events, that would probably put that out and reduce it and pretty much eliminate drought. Right now, it doesn't look like that, so we might be in a status quo condition as we go through March, at least the early part of March. But I do want to point out how much it has been improved over the last 30 days. Now, the Arctic Oscillation, I think throughout the winter, the models have been doing a pretty good job in calling this until recently. And just recently, you can see here, it's really in a highly negative phase. This is the current reading right here, and it's forecast to remain generally negative as we get into the middle part of March. Models have not been covering this all that well over the last couple weeks. I don't think it really called this negative phase as strong as it currently is, and that cold air that has really pushed off to the south. But prior to the recent events, it's been doing pretty good. So the big picture, we're going to have an alternating jet stream this week. Early this week, the jet stream here is going to be bringing a pulse of energy across the central part of the U.S. and is going to affect parts of the southeast U.S. I've sort of indicated early this week that area of energy moving off, digging to the southeast U.S., and that will bring a chance of some modest rainfall and snowfall in higher elevations, perhaps in parts of Virginia snow as well. But for the most part, this is not going to be the rain event that we saw over the last couple weeks. It's also going to be in a different area. It could be over the northern part of the southeast U.S. and the western part of the southeast U.S. It's not going to be digging into the far south as the other ones have done in the recent past. Now, by late this week, look at the position of the jet stream in yellow. It bows up to the north of the central U.S., and when you get the jet stream bowing from sort of a digging trough to a bulging type of trough, we're going to see alternating temperatures. And what that will mean is colder temperatures early, moderating temperatures later in the week. Now, I thought I'd put the paths of the surface lows this week because that gives us some indication as far as precipitation patterns. Over the last couple weeks, these surface lows have been developing along the Gulf and lifting up here. That's why we've had so much heavy rain over the southeast U.S. The track of the low to watch this week is this low right here. And the heaviest rain is going to be along this path of the low. And so you see it's going to just sort of be brushing mainly the western and northern parts of the southeast U.S. I don't see any tracks of lows developing over the southern area. So that area that has got a lot of rain, probably there's more of a threat now to flooding than drought at the current moment. And it does not look like the heaviest rain should fall over that area. But I did want to mention vulnerabilities here, both over the southeast U.S. as well as the larger picture. I did want to point out this is the past 30-day percent of normal is the colors that are shaded, and then the dots are the current areas of flooding. So we do have an area of vulnerability should heavier rain occur over southern parts of Alabama, south parts of Georgia, and small parts of South Carolina. Right now, though, into the foreseeable future, I do not see heavy rain in that area, so I think we'll be okay. But the vulnerabilities will remain for at least a while. Now, they probably won't remain as long as usual because the overall lower soil moisture is very low due to this prolonged drought. So you're probably going to see an improvement in pulling back from a vulnerability quicker than you normally would, just because even though upper soils have been saturated, lower soils still have quite a bit of recharge to go. So here's the 7-day forecast from the Hydrometeorological Prediction Center for this upcoming week. And I mentioned, if you remember that track of the low that I showed, sort of coming in this area, the heaviest rain and snow will be along and north of that track. Parts of Virginia, very significant rainfall and snow in higher elevations. But pretty much most of the southeast U.S., a one-shot chance of precipitation, generally averaging 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch, but then as we get into the Carolinas, maybe a bit heavier, around 1 inch. So quite a bit of change. This is more your typical week, winter week. The hot spots look like a snow event over parts of the middle part of the nation, but over the southeast U.S., fairly benign, especially compared to the last 2 weeks. So the takeaway points, quieter than the recent past. Some modest amounts of precipitation this week. Temperatures alternating, initially cold, then moderating a bit as we get into the latter part of the week. Now, I'm running a little bit behind in my newsletter this month. I didn't have internet access last week, but I promise you I will be getting that out early this week, as well as some of my reports, such as the ACF report, most likely tomorrow. Thank you for listening to today's briefing. I will be updating this again next Sunday.